Hello there. How's it going? Hello. How's it going?
Good, Thomas. How are you?
Right.
Scott is trying to get on too, and my guess is he'll be along in a minute.
Hello,
Uh,
hello.
hey, Chad. Joe is not going to make it. He sends very last minute regrets that he got slammed with work. So,
Seriously.
yes.
What?
So,
Did you just say Joe can't make it?
I did. So I got to ask you, Thomas,
Wow.
while we're waiting for Scott, how is it you even know who Woofing Cookies are?
Well, I was one of the many people who, when the Scar Wars came out, I read the book and then did some researching online.
Thank you.
Still a great book. It's probably one of my favorites.
Yeah, I appreciate that.
You got a nice recording setup there, Len. When'd you get that?
I've been very slowly building a little home. It's like a home office studio, so it's a place to.
Good lighting.
Yeah, good.
Yeah.
luck, Jeff.
I thank Mrs. Len for that. She's better at that. That's Kristen. Yeah, no.
It's always a woman's touch, right?
Huh?
It always takes a woman's touch.
Ooh, Scott's ready. Okay.
Oh, good. Good.
Hey there. Welcome.
Still there. It is. Hey, Scotty.
Hey, how you doing, guys?
I don't want to
All
upset
right.
you, and I'm glad you're sitting down, but Joe's not going to make it.
You know, there goes that huge bet I placed.
Okay,
I'll
so
never learn.
So I hope it's just because of work that he couldn't make it.
that's what he said. Yes.
Well, let's start the interview then. I
Great.
have a few questions. I made a little list just so I wouldn't forget. So, first is with the name. It's a wonderful name. Understand it's from the movie Times Square. It's a funny little quote. I found the scene. But before that, you're called American Standard. And I was wondering how that name came about and why the switch.
Well, we weren't originally American Standard. We were originally Woofing Cookies. And then
We changed to American Standard and then decided to go back.
Oh.
We changed because friends and family were like, "Woofing Cookies? Are you serious?" And we eventually caved. We caved. And American Standard, because it's on all the plumbing fixtures, was our little nod to our inside joke that it was still Woofing Cookies,
And free advertising.
And free advertising. Yeah. We would get so many listeners because they would go pee and want to listen to our band.
Of course.
And then the other thing I want to ask you is on all the old ads and all the old records, you leave out your last names. Why?
Didn't seem important. I don't know.
I guess when your last names are Vlahos, Strohmayer, Nafz, and Laskowitz, it's a lot easier.
There's no room. There was no room back then. We had to pay per letter.
Oh,
You
really?
know, Len, Chad, Scott, and Joe. It just sounds cooler. And it just when you start shoehorning those last names in there, the street cred goes down. I don't know.
Yeah, it has an air of mystique. Like, who are these guys?
Yeah,
Track 'em down.
yeah. Yeah, mystique. That's a good word.
And we don't want anyone to be able to find us.
But isn't that how you get noticed? It seems counterintuitive to me.
Well,
Yeah.
the album can sell without anybody knowing our name.
Yeah, remember this is pre-internet, right? So there's nobody doing a name search on any one of us or even on Woofing Cookies in 1980.
Something.
Yeah, whatever year.
Okay. So I called you all together because Gum Tortilla Shoes is turning 35 this year. It's a big milestone. And I understand it's been out of print for a long time. I just want to ask you first, what are your memories of the record? Like, looking back now, is it still a good record to you?
I think so. Yeah.
I still love it.
Yeah. There's some stuff. Maybe in hindsight, some of the stuff I say, I wish I could have sang that better. I mean, I could say that about almost all the stuff. But there is certainly some highlights on that album. There are songs that I love as much as I love from any other band that I love.
I would
Specifics?
say that my feelings for that record are still the same to this day. Kind of along the line with Scott, there are a couple of things here and there that could have been better, but what did we record this thing in a day, 12 hours, and mixed it in 3 days, something like that, 3 nights. So it still stands up for me. I like listening to it and puts a smile on my face.
I agree. Both of those guys could have been better on the record. I'm kidding. I'm super proud of it. I will just put my iPhone on shuffle in the car, and I have that album as one of the things it could have been. So every 50th song, some cut from the record will pop up, and there are some things I like. I love the fact that we did a sound check on the record.
I was just going to mention that I found a review of that song online recently. I don't remember from where though.
It's one of my favorite pieces. I love that.
Yeah, we recorded it in a studio in Bronxville, New York called The Loft, which later went on to record a lot of Grammy-winning hits. Rihanna, I think, recorded some stuff there, and some others. But the guy who ran it, this guy Al Hamburger, who was the engineer, sort of co-producer of that record with us, we just had fun. If you listen to Girl Next Door with the headphones on, the tambourine is going back and forth, and instead of just working the knob to move it back and forth, Scotty ran across a mic on one end of the studio to the other, playing tambourine the whole way. It was stereo tambourine with Scott getting a workout.
It was Al's idea. We'll put a microphone over here. We'll put one way over here, and then you could just go to each one.
That's the scene in the Scarboys, if I'm not mistaken, right?
What was that?
That's in the Scarboys, if I'm not mistaken. Right?
A lot of what's in the
There are a lot of
Scarboys
references,
comes directly from the Woofing Cookies actual real life experience.
Sorry, go on. I didn't mean to interrupt.
So without Al, I don't think any of us, this band would never have been anywhere. And he was an instrumental part. He was our 5th Woofing Cookie.
Yeah, I think that's true.
Yeah, for sure. And he's such a sweetheart. He's still around. Google him, check him out. Genius.
I think I will. But then the name of that record also stands out as not only memorable, but intriguing. I've just found out that it was just selected at random. You all chose a word. Was it out of a hat or something? I know, Len, you chose shoes. I want to know, what did you pick?
This guy's done his research.
I didn't want to come without anything.
It was funny.
It's
I remember,
what do you do? I don't want to be that guy.
I remember, usually when we would rehearse, we'd go over to Len's house, and Len's parents, God bless them, allowed us to make all that racket in their basement. But on this one occasion, this was very rare, the band was at my house, and we were in the basement of all places, where nobody hangs out at my house. It's a cramped, ugly little place. And we were down there for, I can't remember, for a particular reason. And we thought about this and said, all right, we need a name for the album. Wasn't it, we were constrained by time. We needed it right away. We needed it by the next day or something, didn't we?
Of course.
No, I think that was the album cover, because we were all in Atlantic City, and the label said, we need the album cover tomorrow. And
right.
I think you and Chad actually.
No, it was Chad. That was all Chad.
Chad. I know it wasn't me.
What? the LP?
Yeah, the
that was your brother, Chris.
No, he did the back. You did all the front. You did all the typing on the front.
Yeah. I knew how to type. What was the one who knew how to type? I guess I don't know. Yeah. Barely.
But the name we were I don't remember why we just stood there and said, okay, here's because we were having such a problem with picking a damn name. That was the problem.
We took the dictionary, and just like we.
No. You're thinking of something else. Yeah. We just sat there. Len said, all right, everybody pick a word, start. And it was horse, gum, tortilla, and shoes.
But wait, I know my word was shoes. What were your words?
Yours don't remember? You don't?
Gum?
You don't remember.
Was yours gum? No, then
Mine, I was horse. Joe was gum. Chad was tortilla.
Good.
You were shoes.
Yeah. All
right.
You were shoes for that obvious reason, because of that movie.
Any reason those particular words were chosen? Were you thinking anything at the moment? Do you remember what was going through your mind when you just shouted it out?
Yes.
I had recently dropped out of NYU Film School, and I made a student film called Shoes. And the point of the film, there was a lot of kids in the class who would make films that were very pretentious, had lots of deep meaning. So I purposely made a film with no meaning whatsoever to see what comments people would make. And it was just these random images, and it was called Shoes. And the second the lights came up, the professor said, So that was supposed to have no meaning on purpose, right? He totally blew it for me.
Ah.
Anyway, that's where my word came from. What about you guys?
When suddenly called upon to think of a word, I could only think of a word that occurred to me when someone had mentioned to me, when someone had told them to pick a word, the word they had chosen was horse. And so when somebody said pick a word, the only word I could think of was horse.
So it was like some advice, like if you ever have to choose a word randomly, choose horse.
No, it was more like I was there when somebody was asked to pick a word, and the word that they picked was horse, or something like that.
I was eating them. Probably had a bag of chips. It's always around food for me. So,
Nice.
Yeah.
All right.
We may never know why Joe chose gum.
Perhaps we can get you on a second time. Get the whole story.
Absolutely.
Next, I wanted to ask you, in the liner notes for the album, it says background vocals on new song by a bunch of girls whose names we lost. Did you ever remember those names?
Not a single one of them. We had them write them all on a piece of paper in the studio. We actually went from the studio onto the streets of Bronxville and just started finding these high school girls. Do you want to sing on a record? They're like, huh? Sure, okay. And they followed us into this dark, weird doorway, and followed us into the studio. And to their credit, they did it. They wrote their names down, and whoever, I'm sure it was me who lost their names.
Yep,
I actually feel bad about it to this day that they didn't get appropriately credited.
I want to add a little to that. The studio was above a movie theater in Bronxville, a little town in Westchester. And we were recording or mixing our record at that point. And it was a beautiful day, and we had the windows open in the sound booth, in the control room, and blasting whatever song. And then also, I remember, maybe I'm making this up, but I just remember these girls coming out from the movie and then screaming up at us at the building, like, "What are you doing up there?" And then we chased after them and brought them up. And they just completely took over the place, filled up the studio. We gave them the lines, they did it, and then they just left. That was it.
Probably somewhere out there, they're like shaking their fist, like, darn you, Woofing Cookies.
Where's our residual?
Yeah.
Wait, we're saying the same thing.
Where's our residual?
I think if anything, they're simply aware of the bullet that they dodged. That could have been our names, our last names all over the back of that album.
There was anyone else who featured on it? Or just it?
On that record, we played everything except for those vocals. On the B-side of our first single, a friend of the band, really a friend of Joe's, named Tom Hillis, played guitar. And we put on there, Tom Hillis appears courtesy of Prison Records, and there was no such thing as Prison Records, but Tom didn't appreciate that for some reason, I found out later. Whatever.
Sorry, Tom.
Sorry, Tom.
All right. Speaking of those singles and the album, it's been out of print for a long time. I went to try to listen to it, just get in the zone, really acquaint myself with the discography, but I can only find a few scattered songs. There's only one from the album, In the City music video, and then there's clips of songs that didn't get released, like Annie. There's the whole studio session, but from my research, it didn't seem like it ever got released.
Annie was post Horse Gum Tortilla Shoes. I would maybe be bold enough to say that would have been on our second record if we ever did one, but it was just material that we're writing. Scott came to the studio or rehearsal room one day with this brilliant bass line, and we ripped it out. And I think that video that you're referring to was just a rehearsal that a friend filmed. But we will have our material online, I promise.
There's this channel called Girls from Japan that like has a bunch of old clips of you guys.
Yeah, Girls from Japan was the B-side for that first single that we
Yeah.
put out on our own, which was called Such a Mistake, was the A-side. So we had the album 245s and then a song on a Midnight Records Christmas compilation.
Yeah.
And then Scott and I played in another band, which we sent in another song to be on the Midnight compilation, their second compilation or third, whatever. And we told them it was another band, and they decided to call it Woofing Cookies anyway. It wasn't actually Woofing Cookies. And it sounds nothing like Woofing Cookies. It's not as good as Woofing Cookies, quite frankly. Yeah, the only place you can find the record now is just eBay or Discog or something, and every so often one will show up.
We will have it streaming once we figure out.
I'm horrified that Boston College doesn't have this in its archive.
I wish we did, because there's something I want to tell you guys.
Send them.
There's something I want to tell you guys about that studio. That's where REM did the first Hurry for Europe single. They finished editing there. So, and you have a footnote in their history. I feel like you belong there.
Well, you know the REM connection to Woofing Cookies.
Yes, I read your very hilarious post, and I do have some more questions with that, but I want to get to that later, because that's another record that predates with Holtz Gum Tortilla Shoes. Right now, I want to focus on that record and why it went out of print. Is there a particular reason? Did it not sell well? Did you guys not feeling it? Did Midnight Records fall or something?
Our label sucked. Sorry, Sean.
In fact, we had heard, the guy in charge of the label had told us that, there's no money, it's not doing very well and all that. But then we had heard later that it actually overseas had gone into a second printing. And, but again, the label didn't tell us that. Yeah. So it's hard to say from our point of view exactly how the record did.
It was a small garage label out of New York City, and in fairness, the guy who ran it passed away. I don't want to say anything ill of him. It got sort of medium rotation airplay that's kind of where we sort of peaked, was at medium rotation. I think one of my regrets, I wish we had an opportunity to do a second record, because Chad was just referencing Annie. We had enough material to, I think, have a really, really good sophomore record, because what we found as we continued to play is Scott and Joe switched positions and were much more comfortable, I think, and natural. Scott is bass and Joe is vocal, and the whole next record would have been almost entirely Joe on vocal. Not all of it, but a lot of it, and it was a different feeling. And I think we were getting more sophisticated in our writing and more sophisticated in the studio, but
bands grow, so that would have. I agree. I think the second album would have been the next step up the ladder.
It was never too late. I mean, you could probably, within the age of email and home studios, you could probably make a few tracks, assemble it remotely. A lot of people doing that during this coronavirus. It's really
twist their arms.
A lot of people doing the coronavirus, they've been doing like the whole remote studio thing. I could see that happening, panning out. Like you could share stems and make a whole new record.
I can do all the editing here. If you guys want to send me tracks, I'll slap it together. So.
All right, here we go.
My TD.
Return of Woofing Cookies. The Return of Woofing Cookies starts now. All right. Okay, now let's go back to In the City. So I know the gist of it from the post you wrote on your Facebook, Len, but you seem to gloss over the actual studio moments. So I was wondering if you all could give us a little bit more information about the recording process. Like, what was Peter Buck like as a producer? Was he nagging you? Was he really cooperative? Were you in a rush?
Well, he produced just In the City, right? Yeah. Did he do 800 Miles? No,
that was on our...
we were in Georgia, in Athens, and what was his name? Keith Strand, right? From the Fleshtones, and Pete Buck came up to our house and said, hey, we got your demo, want to take you into the studio and do In the City. Would you guys be into doing that? And then Len said, no way, I'm not going anywhere near you. And no.
We really had to think about it for a long time.
Yeah, we got back to him very quickly.
Pete lived across the street from where we were. We were renting a house across the street where Pete had just bought a house. And we had actually gone and given him the demo. And there was like 5 songs on it. And he came back and said, yeah, I really like this one demo that's In the City. And we just about fell off the porch when he came over. And because, we were pretty starstruck at that time. REM in 1985 was, I think it was right when which album, Fables of the Reconstruction, had just come out. So that's how I remember it. And And the studio, what was the guy's name? The studio.
John Keane.
John Keane's studio right next door.
And again, yeah, he was right around the corner. You walk down the sidewalk a little bit around the corner, and there was this little house. You know, you had to push through the ivy and everything. But you walked inside, and there's a recording studio where everybody and their grandmother is recorded. It was cool. It was a really cool experience. And I don't know if you recall differently, but Pete Buck seemed to be very chill.
Totally.
He was not really put. He would suggest and whatnot, but yeah, I think he understood that what he wanted was for us to play. That's why he picked the song, and he just wanted us to play it.
He was great. He was really into becoming a producer, and it was, I think, one of our first times we had somebody besides Al behind a console going, throwing ideas at us and working the song, you know, just molding it just a little bit more that it needed before letting it go on into being recorded. And it was just great. It was such a hoot to just be in the studio behind the kit and looking at the control booth, and there's this, you know, all this history around us, and Pete Buck just going, you know, do Keith Moon film, do this, you know, hit that thing. And but it was also, you know, there was time. Like, we just had a certain set time to do it, went in, did it. Maybe we did lay down 3 times and did a couple of punch-ins, and before I knew it, it was mixed. And we had it.
To this day, it's the best guitar sound I've ever had recorded.
Phenomenal.
I don't know what magic he worked or what magic that board and,
Yep.
and Pete and John worked together, but I still love the guitar sound on that track.
I think
I'd say that.
Good.
Being in that studio, getting a taste of what it's like at that point, you know, I think that was where we really did something that wasn't just on our own completely. You know, we collaborated with Al, but I kind of feel like I said before, he was always part of the band. But this was like, we had somebody who was established and pushing us in a direction, you know, guiding us a little bit. And that was really something else.
That sounds really cool. All right, so moving on, I wanted to ask you then about the Christmas songs you mentioned. So if the second one wasn't Woofing Cookies, who was in that band? And what was the other band actually called?
Is that the compilation
Yeah,
song?
the second
one-
compilation.
It was Len and I, because after we all moved to Atlantic City, and then Joe had left, and then Chad left, and then Len and I were still there, so we got a different apartment together. So we were playing just bass and guitar together. We for that particular song, we got my younger brother Al to play drums, and we got a friend of ours in Atlantic City named Lonnie to do the singing. And I think was that it? It was just the 4 of us.
4 of us.
And we called it the guys. It was just the guys. You know, we were only together for that song. We've played with my brother at other times, but we've never really recorded with him or anything. And that was it. It was just the one song, and it had, as far as we were concerned, had absolutely nothing to do with Woofing Cookies whatsoever. But that was not the way the label saw it. They saw, oh, it's Len and Scott. It's Woofing Cookies. So they put that name on there.
Yeah, we were not happy about that.
We were not happy about that.
And the song, that song's okay. And Lonnie has he has a very sweet voice, which is different than we tend to be more sort of a Woofing Cookies was much edgier than that song. The other song, Santa Ain't Santa's, it's another one of my favorite Woofing Cookie tracks. Did you find that one?
Yes, I did. Both the Christmas songs are online. I could find those.
Okay. Yeah, Santa Ain't Santa is a great song. I love Joe's vocals on that.
I love his rant at the end. Yeah.
Yes.
What does it mean? Is it like sounds like a robbery is going on?
More robbery and serial murder.
You know, it's left to interpretation.
He goes out on a rampage, and you got to ask Joe because he wrote the lyrics to it.
Okay.
But our label would approach us. I think we were on a Halloween compilation as well.
Were we?
I think so. It was just like Such a Mistake or something like that. but they would release these, label comps periodically and call us to do it. And we'd always wait, oh no, it's tomorrow. Let's go to the studio. And I remember, just like Scotty with the tambourine, Al opening up this drawer in a dresser in the corner of the studio, and it was just full of all sorts of bells and whistles and
It was like romper
rattles and things,
triangles.
Yeah, triangles. And so he's like, "Here you go, guys, get in the room." And he set up those speakers, and we were just honking away, crazy. And that was really nice.
It was pre-digital, so we just did lots of fun stuff. I remember there was a sort of a not an amphitheater, but sort of almost an auditorium-sized room at that time in the studio, which doesn't exist anymore. And for I think, like us, we put the amp on one end of the room with a mic in front of it and a second mic across the room. So to create just a big sort of room sound, which all of that now you do that digitally. And I think something's lost in the, when I sound old now, but when you lose analog and you're sort of forced to make these decisions, and look, ours is not one of the greatest records ever made, right? But if you look back at what are considered to be the greatest records ever made, and think about how, Pet Sounds or Joni Mitchell's Blue or some of these other records from 1960s and early 70s were with the technology they used to get the sound that they did and how those sounds endure. I don't know. I sometimes the old man in me is like, digital, everything you can do with digital is phenomenal, but there's a little bit of a lost art.
Yeah, it makes total sense, especially now with all those like digital reverbs. They actually do what you're describing to sample it. And then they just like sell it at like $200. It's like, wait, can I just go to my local amphitheater, do the same thing?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. That reminds me to ask you too. So I moderate a site called Equipboard, which tracks artist gear. I made you a page a little while, Len. I couldn't find your names at the time, guys. Not to make you feel left out. But I was wondering what you guys were using back then, so I can put up on the site, show the other people. Because, like you said, that tone from back in the day was great. What are you guys using? Do you still have your old stuff?
I still have. It's in crap condition. It needs to be repaired. But I had a 1978 Fender Stratocaster that I used pretty much exclusively in Woofing Cookies. And I had a variety of amps over time. I think ultimately it was a Strat through a PV amp with some I think I only ever had one DoD effects pedal. It was just a distortion box. So that was me.
Which distortion? There are a lot of DoD distortions.
Dude, this 35 years ago. I have no idea.
Well, you tell me the color at least. Green. It was a green one? Okay. What about you guys? Scott, Chad?
Oh, at the time I was singing. I would sing into any microphone that was in front of me, I suppose. I forget. We had the first one that we used to use. It was with a big silver 1950s radio station microphone. It was a big Shure thing. But after that, we got a regular microphone. When I was playing bass, I was playing a Univox is the name. I've never seen another one like it.
Yeah, I was watching the Any video and I was like, that's a really cool looking bass, but I've never seen it. So it's a Univox.
It's a Univox. I've looked for it online, but I can't find another one like it.
Challenge accepted.
Yeah. Oh yeah, I still have it. I drilled a hole in it, so it now stands on a post.
Hang on.
I don't have to hold it.
While Chad talks about his kid, I'll be right back.
Chad?
Well, the recordings were done at Lips at the Loft, and that was a Ludwig, I think 6-piece. That Al's brother, he was a drummer. It was his kit. Usually they use like hydraulic heads on there, so it gave a kind of really good solid sound. There's Len with the guitar.
Come on, you have to do that. Nice.
Cool.
And now I gotta ask about the stickers.
Where'd you get those stickers in the back, Len?
I have no idea.
The truck stop or the
they were often out of vending machines.
vending machine.
I don't remember, but Chad, what kit did you play when we played live, though? What was?
Oh my goodness! It was a hodgepodge of junk drums that I found off the one ad in the local.
Well, you had the one that we went on tour with the first time we went on tour. You had the black set, the PMS.
Yeah, it was like PMS and some other.
And there were a couple other pieces, but they all look like they match. But then you bought the Tama set, the huge with the roto toms and the mounted toms and the floor tom. Oh my God, it was incredible.
I was listening to like exclusively Keith Moon almost like every waking hour, and he had this monstrous drum kit with no bottom skins. They were open, and I saw this come up, and I looked up the picture for it. It's again a local listing, and drove. It was in Nyack. The guy I bought off was living in Nyack, and I could barely play this kit, and there was too many drums for what we needed. But yeah, I had more to hide behind, I guess.
Now, do you still have that kit?
That kit is long gone.
Ah.
I sold that when we were living in Atlantic City to get better drums. Yeah.
All right. Are you sure you don't remember what that PV amp was, Len?
Wow. I went through a variety of amps. The PV is the last one I remember having. I have one now, but it came later. I went. Scott and I continued to play in and out of bands together, kind of into the mid to late '90s.
Okay.
And I think whatever Woofing Cookies amp, the very first amp I had was a stage amplifier, which was, and we were running vocals and guitar through that together. We were so loud.
What?
Chad and Chad can talk about what it affected him, but with the first time we played in Athens, Georgia, REM's manager, Jefferson Holtz, was in the audience, and we tracked him down after the gig, and we were like, again, this is before our van broke down, before we met Peter. We're like, what'd you think? And he said, quote, "I beg your humble avoidance. It was just too loud." I'll never forget that. It's one of my favorite.
I love that one.
You gotta understand, it's like before Nirvana.
I beg your humble avoidance.
This is a great line.
Yeah.
That probably could have made its way into one of our songs at some point.
Sounds like a great T-shirt, honestly.
Good name for a band, Humble Avoidance.
It is very, yeah. Oh man, I gotta take that. That is a good name. Okay, looking back at the thing. Okay. Ooh, speaking of the van, whatever happened to it? I was reading earlier today, you had an Oldsmobile Omega called Boris, and then you had a Ford Econoline, which is the one that broke down in Athens. Whatever became of those cars?
Oh, I don't know what happened.
The Omega was my parents' car, and it just eventually died a natural death. Chad, do you know what happened to the van?
The van, we fixed it, got back to New York and sold it. Paid off whoever we owed money.
Oh, that's right. We unloaded that thing on somebody. Oh my God.
Yeah, well, they got a completely rebuilt.
It was like a kid. It was like a kid too.
Yeah. It was
wow.
terrible.
Oh, geez, I feel bad all of a sudden. I guess I didn't at the time.
That Oldsmobile, my goodness, did we put it through the ringers? You drove that thing like no tomorrow every time. I remember coming back from CBGB's, we would play some audition night on a Monday and get done at like 1 a.m. and we all had like, oh no, I've got a tree exam tomorrow. And Lenny would just fly up the FTR. We'll be home in 15 minutes, guys.
And we literally packed Scott in the back seat with the equipment because we had to take the back seat out to fit all of us in the equipment. I just want to say that this, because you said you had read Scarboys, and I'm pretty sure this scene made it into the book. Literally, so the book, there are no real life characters in the book except for one person, and that's the drummer. Rich's dad is based very specifically on Chad's father, who is a mechanic, and all the scenes that happened with Rich's dad happened in real life, including when our van was breaking down. We pull off to the side of the road at 5 a.m. or 6 a.m. Chad woke his father up and held the phone up so his father could hear the engine, and his father said, "You're throwing an engine rod." He diagnosed that over the phone. I will never forget that.
We did. It was great.
20 miles later, we threw the rod. So
I'm like, can we drive the car? Like, can we drive this van another 100 miles? He's like, you're not going to go 10 feet.
That's interesting.
And Chad's dad, who is how old, Chad?
He's 100.
100 years old.
Yeah.
He helped us get our inspection sticker. Because there's no way that van was passing inspection without magical. So those parts of the Scar Boys are come right from real life and Chad's father.
Yeah. So in the book, it's a cotter pin now. I don't know my cars well. Is that the same part, or is that a deliberate change?
Well, that's
those were two different episodes. The one was the cotter pin that came loose, the linkage. It was the clutch linkage, right? Came undone. So Chad, in the pouring rain, I've never seen rain like this. It was torrential. There was like this much water in the gutter, and Chad is on his back fixing the linkage. It was unbelievable.
And he did. And
he fixed it and we got out of there.
I think we should give him a round of applause right now.
I should, yes. That was one of the most incredible things I think I've ever seen.
I made it to the gig.
Totally agree.
We were like driving around looking for a radio station that we're going to get interviewed at. I think it was Richmond or Greensboro.
No, it was Richmond.
Yeah, it was Richmond. That's cool.
One thing now, it's coming back to me, to ask you is, how did you even form? That's one of the few things I can't find online. Like, what compelled you guys to come together?
Oh, well, it was the three of us would hang out all the time. I think Joe was there as well, but we were watching Times Square, the movie.
Yeah.
And there's a line in there. The girl says, "You make me want to woof my cookies." And we all thought it was just like a cool name for a band. And who do we know that's in a band that we could give that name to? And we went back to school, and I just remember going up to some buddies that are all into like metal, and I'm like, I got a name for a band for you guys, and like, go away, leave me alone. So we started a band.
We started the band actually with Chad, who had played drums a little bit. I had been playing guitar for like a year and a half. Joe said he had played the bass, but had never played the bass. And when we got to our first rehearsal, I said, "Okay, Joe, let's tune up. Give me an A." And Joe said, "Which one is that?" And I knew we were in trouble. And this fourth guy named John, who was and is a virtuoso guitar player. I mean, John Gibson. Chad, if you know the name of his band, you should plug it, because I don't know what he's in now. But John's
recording an album right now. It's going to come out. But
yeah. And John put up with us for about a month, and he's a friend and he's a good guy. He was nice about it, but he's like, "Guys, I got to move on." And
we didn't know one end to the other, or at least I didn't. I took some drum lessons when I was a kid for a little while. I was in the marching band, but there was enough time I forgot everything. I just keep on relearning the drums. But I don't know. Personally, I was just like, this is such a great name for a band. It can't go to waste, and I'll do whatever I can to make it happen. And we said, yeah, why not? Let's, get a drum set. And that was another adventure with my father, and Lenny was in the back seat. We found a kit, the cheapest drum set I could find, because no money, and he nearly killed us backing up on the highway to take the exit, but bought this Ludwig, which was a nice kit. I needed like one more drum on it. And we just did our best, to write songs, and one after the next, but we just stuck with it.
And Scotty, are you an original member of Woofing Cookies?
I am not an original member of Woofing Cookies. The band formed, and it wasn't until in fact, I wasn't even hanging out with these guys. Len and Chad were hanging out together in high school, and Joe, they were in the same video production class. And it was only after they had already gotten together to play that Len and I started hanging out. And then Len said, "Hey, listen, you should audition for the band." So I came up one night, and what did we do? Freeze frame. Jay Giles was freeze frame. So they played and I sang, and then they said, "All right, we're gonna talk about this for a few minutes." And so I left the room and came back in the room like, yeah, we want you in the band. Len confessed years later that my singing wasn't so hot, but he figured he wanted me in the band.
Well,
so.
It was that we were so loud we couldn't hear you.
You couldn't hear that. I snuck my way into the band.
What's really interesting is Scott. Scott was a relatively shy kid who just remade himself into this front man. I don't know. You were always a kind of quiet, more reserved, certainly than me or Chad or Joe, and you sort of remade yourself into this front man, which I always thought was pretty cool.
It was interesting because I could be somebody else. It was a classic textbook case of being somebody else. I could get up on stage, and with the band making a lot of noise, I could scream and yell, and I didn't have to write the lyrics. The words were all given to me, so it was cool. I just had to run with it. So it was pretty cool. Our first public gig, it was obvious I wasn't a great singer, but that motivated me. Hearing criticism motivated me not to just to go, oh, well, forget this, I'm not doing this. But I tried a lot harder to get it right.
It was sort of amazing I where we started, the noise that we made where we started to where we wound up. It's again one of those things in my life I'm super proud of. It was relentless. If there's somebody out there who hears this radio interview who's a young musician, it's just relentless. It's reps, man. It's just relentless practice. I mean, we practice because we all so fell in love with it, and frankly fell in love with each other as friends that we would practice 3-4 hours a day, 5 or 6 days a week. Eventually, you're gonna get good, and we did. And the songwriting got better, and the playing got better, and our live shows got better. When before our van broke down, we were about 2 weeks into that tour. We were a well-oiled machine on the road. I mean, I don't know of a band who was sounding better than we. I know it sounds immodest, but I'm super proud of what we were becoming. So.
It was a great experience.
Yeah.
I couldn't have pegged, if a month before that audition, if you had told me what was going to happen over the next few years, I could not have believed it.
I wouldn't trade it for anything at all.
Yeah, no, absolutely not.
And
up until fairly recently, all things considered, I probably would have given up almost everything to go back and do it again. It was a fun time. I've had way too much invested now. I could not do that. But there was a point in my life up till fairly recently that I would have seen, I would dump this and go back and do that. That was a huge amount of fun.
I'd have to say that, the one thing I would add on to what Lenny said about if there's anybody out there thinking about starting a band and, maybe it should just do it without a doubt and know that there's other musicians out there and there are people who want to hear your music and not write your songs, put them together, put them on YouTube, get them out there, get out in the park and play. Don't worry, are you good enough? Are somebody's going to make fun of you? Of course they are. Everybody makes fun of a band. I made fun of bands, you do. Everybody mocks things or dismisses them, but then there's the fans. And that's connecting with people with music is it's a universal language, and there's nothing else like it. Getting up on a stage or being in an audience and just getting on that plane with everybody else in the room for that period of time. It's magic, it's purely magic. And I remember as a teenager having the opportunity to get backstage at a show, and I met Joey Ramone. And I think this was before our first audition night. And I went up to him, and the Ramones were a huge influence on our band. I went up to him and I said, what do you think? What does it take to be a band? You have to be a great musician. You have to know everybody. You have to be really super cool. And he just, looked down past his sunglasses and he's like, don't worry, kid, just play your music, put your heart into it. You'll be fine. Just do it. That's the most important thing.
Ditto to everything Chad just said. There's an Albus Dumbledore quote in the Harry Potter books that music is a magic beyond anything we do here, and it's everything Chad said is so spot on.
It just is transcendent.
Yeah.
Okay, so moving on from there, I do have a question. I'm looking at your website now, just refresh myself, because there's this one line I would ask you. It's absolutely hilarious. The first sentence for Joe's biography is bass, vocals, illegal activities. What does that mean?
Oh, Joe's not here. Let's go to town, guys.
Yeah, right? Statute of limitations are probably up by now, right?
Wait, where are you seeing that?
It's on your reunion website in the bio section. It's the first line for his
Wait, what
biography.
website?
It's bob.bo.tripod.com. I thought you guys knew about this.
Bob. What? I gotta look this up.
Bob.bow, B-O-W-E.tripod.com. It's a whole website for your reunion tour.
Oh.
Yeah.
I came across an email from Lenny from years ago saying I had nothing to do with this, but it was
Really?
a whole page about how we're going back on tour like 10 years ago or something. I'm like, oh, that's interesting.
So we, in 2002, we got back together and did a reunion show. It was it 25 years or 15 years? It was like 20 years after our first CBGB show. We did a reunion show at CBGB's, which was fun. And then every year, once or twice a year after that, we would get together and we would play. And we decided, you know what, let's go back and record some songs that we never got to record. We wrote a new song and we started and we documented it with a lot of just raw footage. And so we actually, in 2005, went back into the studio, laid down some basic tracks. We never finished. We never went back and finished the vocals, never did the mixes. But in 2005, we spent a lot of time together sort of rehearsing and playing again. And it just fizzled. But we tried that, which was, it was fun. I had fun doing it.
Maybe if Pete Buck's listening to this and he wants to come back and help us mix it.
Pete's a really, really good guy. And we also, I think it was the three of us were was it, who was I with? But we got picked up hitchhiking by Mike Mills and Bill Berry.
What?
And that was you and Chad.
It was Chad. We were in Athens and we didn't have wheels because the van had broken and we were hitchhiking, and just happenstance, Mike Mills and Bill Berry drove by and picked us up and didn't know who we were, but we knew who they were. It was just funny.
Let's talk about that. I haven't heard this one before. What happened then? What was it like?
It just dropped us off. I mean, we once they heard it, we were like, oh yeah, you're those guys. You're the band from New York, and your van broke down, because they had lent us when we crash landed there. We got word to their people, and they lent us their road crew to move our equipment around, which was super, super nice. Everybody in Athens was really nice.
I think the whole town at that time, whoever was a resident and under a certain age, I guess, even any age, was probably in a band or a musician. It was just a big music art community, and a lot of support, a lot of love. I just remember running into Mike and Pete all the time, and everybody's just pretty chill. And what are you up to?
I mean, we were only there for what, 3 or 4 months.
Yeah.
But some of those days, some of those memories are the best memories that I have. are among the best. That was a great time.
Exactly. I mean, I can't agree anymore. We missed out on a lot. The rest of our tour, a lot of headlines, more adventures on the road, perhaps. But when we ended up in Georgia, it was a little bit of a controversy, I recall. Like, I think some people thought that we moved there to capitalize on the music scene going on there. and we had to like kind of redeem ourselves on the radio, WUAG, and then people were like, okay, we understand your van blew up. All right, that's okay. But I remember meeting folks from B-52s and Pylon and you know, what was the Barbecue Killers?
Mm-hmm.
You know, there's so many cool little bands around there. Flat Duo Jets would come in, and you know, it was just it was a scene.
So you still haven't answered my question though. What does this mean, illegal activities for Joe?
I don't think any of us wrote that.
Yeah, but you are all getting ready to dish. So there must have been something.
In fairness to Joe, I mean, we should punish Joe for not showing up by telling him everything, but no, that's just illegal activity.
You know, it's probably just something like at the time he thought, oh yeah, we put that down and make it look cool or something. You know?
Joe had a little shady past there, but we're gonna leave it alone.
Okay.
But I can tell you, I have never volunteered at a soup kitchen.
Does it say that about you on there?
It does, yes, it does. I have never tried to atone for my ways.
Yeah, look at this. I wonder where all this comes from.
I know, it's really weird.
Where do they have the Welcome Woofing Cookies sign?
Right?
Yeah, there's all sorts of stuff from like our press kit and stuff like that.
How do you get the lottery ad to disappear?
I've tried so many times. I think it's just there. It's really annoying. You have to it's like a race. You're like, got to click to the side before it shows up.
So do you want some like artwork and stuff?
Anything, man. I mean,
Yeah, I'll send you like, I have Joe digitized a lot of our analog material that we use in the press kits and things. I'll send it to you, no problem.
Because there's some things on this website that I was learning a lot from. Like, there's they had a link to a few of your songs and a few interviews, but Flash is no longer available, so they're gone. And I was like, shoot. So I was wondering about this. Like, there's an interview with you, Len, from 2005, and then there's like a mini documentary, it says, from like the early 80s. And then it has your whole performance, I think, of but what show is that where you're doing jet plane?
Oh, Scott and Gary.
Scott and Gary.
Yeah, I think the whole Scott and Gary is on it too.
And those guys are really cool. That show had, I mean, 10,000 Maniacs came through there, Butthole Surfers. There was like they had like a really, we were in really, I was really proud to be in the company we were in with who else got to play on that show. And I thought that was one of my favorite nights too, that was just fun. And that was the night before we went on tour.
Yeah.
Yep.
We'll have to go on tour the next day.
You look like you're having a lot of fun. There's like that again. The Girls from Japan channel had a clip of it, but it's just jet plane. It cuts off when you start playing your own song, and I'm like, no, one more. So, how did you guys get on that show?
No idea.
I think they reached out to us somehow or another.
They found us and reached out to us. We had a little bit of a following in New York. We would play CBGBs fairly often, and we were getting some radio play with the Such a Mistake single. So they found us. But they were fun guys.
We had a fair amount of radio play. We charted CMJ.
Nice. So how did Such a Mistake get recorded? What's the origin of that record?
Len?
I mean, it was a song that we were playing, and we decided. Chad and I went to college, and the band broke up. In fact, we were Woofing Cookies, then we were American Standard, and we broke up as American Standard. And it was about a year later, in our freshman year of college, that April, we said, let's get back together, just do like a fun show for, like a show for fun. And we had been playing CBGB showcase nights for a long time. And right before American Standard broke up, we finally got a paying night at CBGB's, and we spit the bit. I mean, we were terrible. So we went back and did another showcase night, and a year away from it, and a year of sort of maturing as human beings, as musicians, we had grown a lot, and we nailed it on the showcase night. And we immediately went from showcase night to a Tuesday, immediately to a Thursday, and immediately to weekends. And we were like, crap, this is pretty good. And we decided, let's put out a record and go on tour. And the record was really supposed to, meant to be to help us to book a tour. So we put that record out on our own. We
met Joni at one of those shows with the Night Porters.
Joni Mitchell?
No, Joni Kreider.
Ah.
Joni Kreider. Yeah, yes. And
she was like, "You get a record. You need a record to get gigs. You know that the clubs don't want to book you on a demo tape."
Right.
You know? So, and she was all about like, come down to the South and play shows with us. And the Night Porters were such a great band.
They were a great band. Yeah.
They're really awesome. Can't find anything. I don't know I have like their 45. That's it.
No. In fact, I recently found there was a band we played with back in the day called the Johnsons, and I found their LP, and I just ordered. I got that through Discogs, and that just came, and it's every bit as good as.
You have to send me the link to that too.
I will.
They were awesome.
But when we put out the record, we sat there, and I think it was Chad did a lot of this work. I remember doing a bunch of it too. Is we stuffed that record into padded envelopes, and we mailed it to every radio station and every nightclub around the country. Yep. And then we just relentlessly made phone calls, getting gigs and booking interviews. If our van hadn't broken down, it's like one of those like what if moments, right? If the van hadn't broken down, because we were getting calls for gigs that we forgot to cancel once the van broke down. Like, you know, I've got 300 people here, and or Tulsa, Oklahoma, there were like a bunch of people waiting, and it was just a weird sort of thing. But the point of the record was to book the tour. But that was to book our first tour. No, it was because it was, in fact, the tour was the Mick tour, which is that 45 cover was for the tour where the van broke down. The first tour had a different name. Which you're right. I'm not going to say here. You're correct. Yeah, because right. But the song was, I think we had recorded it. It was one of our best demos that we had, and it was clearly, you know, if we're going to put out a single, that was the song to go on, for sure. And I don't remember why we put "Girl from Japan" on the back, but
it was rather prescient because it was me on bass and Joe on vocals.
Right.
On our very first single.
I know why we recorded it. It was for Joe, but somehow or another it ended up on there. And
I think it was just because we were in the studio, we were doing a few songs, and that one just came out really good. It was just a lot of fun. We actually were getting a surprisingly to us amount of coverage. We got reviewed in the New York Daily News, Cream Magazine, High Times Magazine. And the name Woofing, because again, when we reformed after that first year of college, we reformed as Woofing Cookies, because we were like, you know what, screw it. This is who we are. This is who we want to be. We stopped listening to sort of naysayers and just decided to have fun. And that's, I think, when things hit a different sort of path and trajectory for us.
So I do have to ask though, why McDonald's as the cover?
No, because we were living on it at the time, as I recall. We figured, hey, you know, we endorse their product. Maybe they'll endorse us. You know, it's just sort of. And then after I think after we had the single cover made, we thought, hey, you know, maybe they could sue us instead. Hey, it's publicity either way, so it didn't matter.
I was sure if there was like a corporate inside joke, like, oh, McDonald's is a mistake. They're hurting the American.
Oh, I meant that. That is much cleverer. No, it's nothing like that.
Okay. All right, let's keep talking about the covers. So they're all really good. I think they're each interestingly done. But Gum Tortilla Shoes looks like a ransom letter. It's always stood out to me.
Well, again, you heard part of that story. That was the night before we had to have the album. The record company said we have to have an album designed by tomorrow. Yeah. And we couldn't think of anything. Everything that we had been thinking of was going to be too expensive. It was too many colors. They wanted it simpler and simpler. And then Chad said, "You know what? Black and white." He sat down. He just started typing all the lyrics out, and that was it. You know, Chad, you know how that went.
Somebody was dictating the lyrics. Good thing I didn't put down the drum part.
But Chad also did the cover for the In the City single. That's Chad also.
That was
his-
drawn in the back of Boris on tour. It's going out of my mind of boredom and just like start doodling. And the first album cover was also on one of our road gigs at a rest stop. And I just took a picture of Len, and that ended up on there.
Wait,
so
what?
is the car in the city
The
single?
first album cover,
Yeah.
record cover, the 45.
It's isn't it Ronald McDonald?
Oh, no, you're thinking of the picture on the back.
You're on the back.
Me
But
on
that
the
was the
back.
same.
I didn't even remember that. So.
Wait, the McDonald's is the back of that?
No, Ronald McDonald's on the front.
Yeah.
Who's on the back?
It's me, Chad said. I don't remember this.
Oh, no, it's me on the back.
It's you.
Oh. And what does that say on the piece of paper? We're on tour, something.
Oh, yeah, I think so.
Yeah,
It was in a
Yeah.
notebook.
Pulled up.
Yeah,
Girls
Woofing
on
Cookies.
the
We're
right.
on
It was
tour.
something that we could hold up to the window.
And then there's a box of cookies. That's awesome.
And a box of cookies. Wallbounds, if I'm not mistaken.
The best chocolate chip cookies
Yes.
next to what you can get at McDonald's, but we don't like McDonald's now. But thank you, Wallbounds. I would not be alive without your cookies.
I gotta grab a box. So is the car on the In the City single Boris?
Yeah, as far as I know, yeah.
That's
yeah.
cool. Nice little tribute. So if the band had gone on, do you think Chad would have been the official designer for all the album covers?
He was moving in that direction.
He was doing a good job in my book, so I'm okay with that.
I guess so.
But my brother, the guy who did the artwork on the back of the album, the actual drawing of the horse Gum Tortilla Shoes, he was working in a like a layout job at the time, so he was able to cut all the acetates for the different colors for the screens for the printing. So yeah, it was cool. It was all inside work.
He was sort of an unofficial member of Woofing Cookies too, because there was one gig where Chad injured his hand really badly, and at the last minute, and Scotty's brother Chris, different than his brother Alex, who played. Chris jumped on and played with us, and Chris was a pretty close member of the band, sort of unofficial member of the band, helped us a lot. We should shout out to Chris too.
Thank you, Chris.
Yeah. Big thank you there.
So actually, okay, a few miscellaneous things go through my head. I want to ask you, Chad, do you remember the name of that Halloween compilation? I haven't heard of this. It didn't show up on your Discogs. There's a few things missing.
It would be like a Midnight Records Halloween. I have it somewhere. I'll get it.
Okay.
I'll have to dig it up.
Thank you. So what led you to choose Midnight as a label if you thought it was so bad?
Oh, Midnight chose us.
It was
Okay.
down-
Midnight reached out to us and said, "Hey, listen."
But you mentioned
I gotta
multiple
tell this
labels.
story.
Yeah.
Okay.
I got this story I got to tell.
All
So the van broke down. The tour is a bust. We wound up living in Georgia. We started to get on each other's nerves. The drive home was sort of brutal. We were ready to kill each other, and Scott and I were secretly quitting the band. And Scott and I went on an audition in New York City. Somebody was advertising for a guitar player and a bass player, and Scott and I went. And on the way back, we stopped in Midnight because Midnight had done a little bit of distribution for the Such a Mistake single. And we walked in, there was this guy, his name was Sam, I think, who worked there. And we were going to see Sam to see if he knew of any bands that were looking, because we were done, Woofing Cookies was done. And we go in, and the owner, JD, comes out, and he has this French accent. He says, I've been looking for you. I want to sign you. We're like, what? And Scott and I were back.
I know this.
Scott and I were back in the band immediately, and we sort of like danced down 23rd Street. We called the other guys, Midnight, because they had gotten a hold of the Peter Buck demo, and they saw, okay, here's Peter Buck was sort of indie rock royalty, and they saw an opportunity. I'm guessing. So, but yeah, that Scott, can you confirm that this?
I can absolutely confirm that was a hilarious evening.
I don't think
we're like, this is it, man. Woofing Cookies is in the toilet. Come on, let's go do something else. And then later on that night, hey, we're signed to a label.
It's like we just keep on coming out of the bowl. backed up. I remember coming back from Georgia and like telling my family or my friends, I'm like, that's it, there's no band. I'll figure out what to do with my life now. And oh well. and I was just like sitting in my room, back at my parents' house, sitting in my room listening to Who. And the phone rings, and it's Lennon. It's like the police. Chad, we're getting the band back together, man. What? Are you crazy? We just broke up last week. Yeah.
Oh, that's funny.
And there we went.
Yeah. Speaking of which, so I'm looking at this fan site, and it says that Chad is the only one who continued his music career. I don't think that's true, because Len, I know you still write your own songs. So what exactly is the whole story about that?
That sounds like Chad wrote this website. This is sounding suspiciously like Chad's.
What, are you kidding me?
Chad's handiwork here.
What?
Well, the other three losers went off to.
What music career did I go on with?
I don't know. I'm asking you.
I mean, no, there wasn't any serious thing. I mean, Lenny and Scott were in a great band afterwards, and
Chad was too. Chad was in a really cool band called Team Spider. Scott and I are in a band called Duh. Joe is really the only one. I think Joe continued to play sort of privately, but I don't remember Joe ever being in a band after Woofing Cookies.
And Len and I have been through several iterations, either as a duo or a trio. So yeah.
Duh was a pretty cool band.
Duh was a very cool band. Some of the best, some of my proudest work it was with Duh.
And Scott was the drummer.
I was the drummer for Duh.
Did those get recorded? Those songs?
Yeah, but they're not uploaded. But again, I can send you MP3s or something.
We got to do like a revival site of all this stuff. I'm covering a lot here.
We'll get you the songs. You play us on Boston College Radio, and then get a Kickstarter to Woofing Cookies reunion in Boston.
You got it.
Big show we ever played was in Boston.
What are the other names of those other bands you were in?
What was the question?
So you guys mentioned there are iterations. You mentioned, Len, there are a bunch of other bands in the 80s and 90s. What were the other band names? What were those other groups?
The only one I remember besides Duh for me and Scott was we called ourselves the Bored Again Pistons. And that was with Scott's brother Chris. The three of us had a
No, that was just you and me. The three of us were three guys named Mo.
Oh, you're right. That which was
I think I saw that.
I can send you those tracks. A couple of those tracks are actually listenable.
Actually listenable. What an endorsement.
And Chad, I know Team Spider was the only one I remember, but I think you were in other bands too, weren't you?
Well, briefly, some bands like just while I was in college, some friends' bands. But Team Spider was a coworker of mine, and Chris Ryan, he had this band, and there was an 80-year-old frontman, Joseph Bernard Zach, God rest his soul. And I came, he was like, yeah, come out, check my band out. Went down to CB's to see him, and I was just blown away with the lyrics and the style, and just became a fan immediately. And we became friends. And at some point or another, he was putting together shows for a variety of clubs around the city, back in, I'd say, like the early 2000s. And then we started talking again about, like, Len, Scott, and Joe and I would get together and like jam, like Lenny mentioned before. We'd have like these reunion kind of get-togethers. And I don't know what really came of it, but I remember like Chris having a show coming up that he was putting together and threw the idea out, or maybe somebody asked, well, let's go do a live show. And I was like, yeah, I think I know how to get this to happen. And I approached Chris, and he was like, yeah, you guys want to reunite and come and play the bill? Great. You're on it. And that's what we did.
So Chad played both ends of that show.
We played this gig, we got together and we rehearsed, and we had this big show, you know, it was all great. And then Chris came up to me at the day of the show and he's like, our drummer wants to play sax in the song. You kind of know it's easy, you know, why don't you sit in on it? And I, you know, didn't really rehearse with him. I didn't really know the song that well, but it went over okay. And it was their ending song, Know That I Love You. And after the show, backstage, the drummer said, you know, he's going off on tour with another band. So Chris asked me to join the band. And I was in it for, I don't know, 3 years, 2 or 3 years, like that. It was a punk band from the city.
I also want to say for that CBGB reunion show that we did in 2002, Chad and his friend Afra made T-shirts, which we sold, and I forget the proceeds benefited the charity that Chad and Afra were supporting. I forget which one it was, but that's a very rare, hard to find collector's item. I no longer have mine, actually.
I still have the silk screen though. Maybe it'll work.
Huh.
I don't know. Have to give it a shot.
Okay, another quote from the website I would like to inquire about. So, actually 2 lines, and I'm rereading this. So the first one is regarding Joe. It says, Joe defined cool with Woofing Cookies. That's not saying much, but it's still better standard than... So was he the cool guy, or who'd you say was like the guy, like the big personality in the band?
Joe sort of exuded cool. I think
Yeah.
I'll give Joe that. Yeah.
Yeah, I would say that. I know it wasn't me.
Joe was the guy who would come in like, you know, he was more of a fashionista than the rest of us. He would, you know, he was really like into a certain look that would change at different times. He was a lot of attitude. He was involved in illegal activities, you know, that sort of.
But you knew about that.
Yeah, no, so the exact line is, Joe defined cool in Woofing Cookies. That might not be saying much, but better to be the standard than not. That's fun. And then the other line is about you, Chad. It says here, he's also the only one with Woofing Cookies to continue the musical career, yada, yada, yada. But don't let him fool you. Chad still pines to the day of wine and cookies. What does that mean?
Pines the day of what?
Pines to the day of wine and cookies, in quotes.
Depends on the cookies, I guess, and the wine. But
Is that like an inside
Not bad.
joke? Is there like a funny story behind that? No?
No.
Okay. I thought I'd ask.
oh, I didn't go near wine until later in life, to tell you the truth.
Reminds me of a line from one of the songs that we used to do about wine and roses.
Oh yeah.
Wasn't there? There was a line about wine and roses, and I can't remember the song. I can't.
I know as soon as you said that, I know the intro guitar part.
All right. Yeah.
What website is this, by the way?
It's the one
That's the Bob Bow, right?
Yeah, it's the same one.
I didn't get it before.
This is the biggest resource I have.
That's funny. Again, I mean that
Yeah.
But I didn't hear
part
the
about me is that
before.
none of that is really true. I don't. It seems fairly made up.
What's the URL?
Yeah, I'll put it-
That Bob Bow.tripod.
Here, I'll put it in the chat. Just you can copy paste it in your browser. But it's got photos. It's got old music, videos, and stuff.
Yeah, it's weird.
It had your
Who
original
is
press
this
kit
guy?
too.
I feel creeped out, man.
Yeah.
Who is this dude?
And then it has your tour dates too. It says 2007. Yeah.
It's like our band stalker or something.
Right?
Yeah, I don't know. Didn't write it. Couldn't tell you.
All right.
And it's full of like pop-ups all over it right now.
Yeah. So this is all false publicity. Granted, any publicity is good.
You know, anybody can do anything on the internet, right?
Right. Yeah, but the most thing that stood out to me was all the links to the archives. There's all these old songs, so I got to get those back now. You got to send me a record. All right, someone's coming back to me. I'm like trying to summon it. Oh, this is so embarrassing. I had such a great question. It's on the tip of my tongue.
Trying to think if we can distract you so your brain will find back to it. We can tell some other interesting anecdote from our.
How was it? Oh my gosh, sorry, I just remembered. Johnny's Dead. It appears in Scargirl, which I haven't finished. I need to. Who is Johnny in the song? Was there any particular, like, is it a parody?
No, it's not a parody.
No, what is that song about?
It was a friend of the band, but really of Joe, a guy named Artie who took his own life. and it kind of I didn't know Artie very well. I'd met him a couple of times, but it impacted me, and I think those lyrics, oddly, even though it was more of a Joe song those lyrics came more from me, and I just remember being really impacted by when Artie took his life, and Artie played guitar, and I don't know if you guys remember him, Scott and Chad.
Only a little bit. He was. I didn't move in the same circles. He was, again, one of Joe's friends, but I had met him.
The three of us all grew up together. Like Chad and I met in nursery school. We met Scott in elementary school. Joe was from a different part of the city we grew up in. We didn't meet Joe till high school. So Joe came with a whole different sort of social network, whereas our social network was sort of, the three of us was more intertwined.
And as we hit high school, I lost touch with these two guys, and they found Joe. So the three of them and another group of people, became friends. It wasn't until one summer that Len and I ran into each other, completely out of context of any of this.
Walking home the street at night.
Yeah, just walking home at midnight, just and just happened to run into each other and started hanging out that very evening. And it was 6 months later you had asked me to join the band,
and we were, Scott and I, from that moment on, for a lot of high school, we're inseparable. We would go to Rocky Horror every Friday and Saturday night.
Yeah,
doing the
if you wanted to know where one of them was, you just had to find the other.
I have said to people, whatever it was that I was gonna do with my life before that moment when we ran into each other is lost to me forever. I don't know what that is, because my life went on a completely different trajectory when we met that night.
As I recall the story as you like to tell it, when you were a little kid, you wanted to grow up to be the ceiling.
Yes, I did want to be a ceiling.
A ceiling?
Yes, a ceiling.
A ceiling.
Yeah. Nobody remembers that you're there, but you watch everything.
That's so Scott.
But we did. We Scott and I were Rocky Horror kids, and we got into it through friends of Scotty's, actually, through Scotty's social circle that he had built. And I kind of got sucked into that, and that was heaps of fun too. And which is why we were watching the Tim Curry movie.
Yep.
That had the
There
line,
you go.
"Make me with my cookies" in it. That Rocky Horror played a part in that.
So.
Yeah.
I realized, so apparently the retrospective reviews of that are not very good. I want to get your take on it. Did you think it was a good movie, or are you like laughing your head off the whole time?
I don't. To me, it doesn't make the movie aspect of it doesn't make any impact. It's the music. I still have a bunch of the songs from that soundtrack.
You have the soundtrack? That's super rare now.
It is. I couldn't find an actual soundtrack. I had to find the songs individually, and I couldn't find them all.
Okay.
But that's a great soundtrack album, and that's mostly what I remember from it. Yeah, the movie. There's a plot.
I barely remember the movie. I should go back and watch it.
Richard, I still haven't heard what you thought of the movie.
What's that?
What did you think of Times Square?
Well, this was at the time not really old enough to hang out in the city at night, all night or whatever. That was I think the linchpin for me, seeing that film and just going, there's all this stuff going on, and it's right, living in the suburbs of Manhattan, it's like right at our back door. And I think it was just a sign for me, like, this is the direction, here you go down to the city, hang out, get into punk. The movie itself, I thought it was a good film, to tell you the truth. It has, it's got a compelling character, it's got a good story, pretty good, low budget film. And what do you think? You seen it?
No, I have not. I've only seen that one clip. We're in the station and they say the line.
I think it's going to play as pretty dated now, is my guess.
Yeah, probably. Not as good as Shoes.
Maybe there's a way to remake it or something. Updated.
Oh, where can I find Shoes? I want to watch that now.
You cannot. That is
Yeah.
lost.
That's lost film. Oh.
I imagine that only existed on like 8mm. And that was it.
That was the 8mm film class with Nick Tanis.
So it's Lost to the Ages?
Yep.
All right. Do you remember what you put in there?
Analog is you can't, nothing lasts forever, whereas digital, which is a whole other thing. Digital makes things last forever, and that's not so good sometimes.
Do you remember what you put in there, those random clips?
It was Scotty in the forest getting tackled by or tackling somebody, a brass armadillo.
Yeah.
That's all I remember.
It was a lot of non sequitur shots and weird stuff. And Chad, I thought you were there. You weren't there?
I think Chad was there when we made it.
There was like a tackling scene, and I know there was somebody else besides me and you. I can't remember who it was.
Could have been like Scott Carson or somebody else.
That's possible. It might have been somebody else from your class.
The other crew. That was a fun workshop, sight and sound. You had to make a little 3-minute film in like a week, from beginning to end.
Okay. And then the last main question is, so apparently I'm getting the vibe that Joe wrote all the lyrics.
No.
Okay, that's what I asked. So who wrote what?
We all wrote. Somebody would come to the studio with the bones of a song, and then the band would take it and make it a Woofing Cookies song. So like in the city, Chad wrote the lyrics, and I had the bones of the music. Andy Scott wrote the music, and Joe had the lyrics. Something like Girl Next Door was one where I had the bones of the music and the lyrics together. But it was any one of us would come in either with some lyrics or some music, or we would have gotten together and made it. So we all four took songwriting credit for everything because we all four deserved songwriting credit for everything.
Cool. All right.
We were really collaborative. I mean, that's what we were.
Good. Okay. Now, the last thing is a little thing I ask everyone. What music are you currently listening to? Doesn't have to be recent. Doesn't have to be old. Whatever. What's been on your stereo?
I'm mostly the playlist I go for is an 80s collection. Again, is stuff from the Times Square soundtrack. Just a ton of stuff. Skeptics are definitely on there from Worry Beads.
Let's talk about the Skeptics today. We have to table that. Come back.
But I'm trying to think. I love that stuff. Elvis Costello, Joe Jackson, Squeeze. That's what's on that list. There's a lot of different stuff.
I've got two things. One is upstairs in our house. My family got me a turntable for Christmas, and I had no vinyl, so I've started rebuilding a vinyl collection.
You almost said record player.
I did. And I'm finding in that environment, I'm listening to stuff that's a little more mellow. Like some of the go-to albums that I'm putting on more often there's a Merle Haggard and George Jones did an album together that I absolutely love.
Oh yeah.
Bob Marley's Legend is one that I pull out quite a bit. Boston's first album, which isn't quite mellow, but I put that on here. On this computer, this is my office studio. I'm working from home mostly now. So when I'm down here all day, I actually pulled up Rolling Stones, it was a year ago, 500 greatest albums of all time. And I'm going through it and just going to iTunes and listening, because I have an Apple Music subscription, and I'm just listening to the next album on the list. If I can't stand it, I go on to something else. But it's been really interesting, and so I'm skipping some stuff. But like I'd never listened to Television's Marquee Moon all the way through, and I listened to that today. It's a fantastic record, right? Incredible. So but also at the same time, like Aretha Franklin's seminal album, or Stevie Wonder's Songs in the Key of Life. Like there's like stuff that I maybe wouldn't normally pull out that I'm forcing myself to listen to, including some hip hop, including some country, including some sort of art rock. And so it's been a really fun little project. I'm in the low 100s right now. So
I think I'm going to join you in that. That sounds like a fun journey.
It is.
I've been listening to pretty much like the first go-to lately this past month is the Rolling Stones, and specifically for the rhythm section. Just listening to rhythm guitar and the bass, and I don't know why I never really tuned into it before, but it's just really something to just focus on a part of a band. That's so great. And then it just took my appreciation for them to a higher level. So that's one. And with that, I followed their, another band, which is from Boston, Aerosmith. I've been listening to their early records again. Get Your Wings is just, I think that was the first record I remember playing taking on my own and putting it on a turntable and playing it was Get Your Wings. And I didn't know what was going on. My sisters would play Beatles, nonstop, Beatles and the Byrds and Chicago. And I loved that, as a child listening to that, but somehow or another, Aerosmith was kept away from me. And then when I found it and played it, it was altering, and it still is. It takes me right back to that moment. And the whole album is just something else.
Chad, is there any reason Aerosmith might have been kept away from you?
No, not really. I mean, I think it's because it was hard rock. I mean, my brother was in a band with Steve Tyler.
That's what I was trying to get you to talk about.
Yeah.
but that wasn't anything held back. I think it was just because it was, hard rock and I was a little kid. It wasn't age appropriate music to listen to. Listen to their lyrics. Big difference from Yellow Submarine. But so Aerosmith and the Rolling Stones, and a lot of David Grohl's projects been listening to lately. And some Johnny Cash.
Can't go wrong
I
with
just put a Johnny Cash playlist together.
Can't go wrong with Johnny Cash.
Yep.
Well,
about
That's
you?
funny. It was
rounded
just a
across
few
the-
days ago. That's hilarious.
One of
They
the
go
very
rounded across.
I remember us covering, I thought was like Folsom Prison Blues or something.
Folsom Prison Blues and Ring of Fire.
Ring of Fire was
Well, I mean, we butchered it in our very specific way, but
Squeezebox by The Who. Do You Want to Dance? The Ramones version of the old 50s hit. Yeah. Cover tunes were not our specialty.
we
Jack
did,
cover's pretty good.
a lot of bands started out as a cover band, grew up that way. We wrote our own songs and then got good enough to play a cover song.
yes, exactly. I never quite
We couldn't play a cover song. We'd butcher it. So like one of these days we're going to play a Cars tune.
In fact, I would love to get together with you guys now and start a cover band. That would
I'm
just.
down for that. Absolutely.
The problem is I live 2,000 miles away, but
This
yeah,
is true.
that would be fun.
Chad, you and I should get a cover band.
Fine. I don't know if I'm good enough. What was the Cars song that we would play? We played it at a party.
Oh, Best Friend's Girl.
Yeah.
He used to be mine.
What a great band. I've been listening to them as well lately.
I found the song for you, actually. Your Scar Boys playlist. Someone would put a bunch of the chapter titles together. And that was in there. Yeah. That's a good song. All right. Well, that's all the questions I have. Thank you for your time. And yeah, I mean, we've been going on for a long time. I know you're trying not to go for like an hour 20. It's now like an hour 40. So I apologize for keeping you for so long. This has been great. I've been a fan for a little while now, but I could not find anything. So talking to get these answers is great.
It'd be fun. There's probably some old friends of Woofing Cookies who may tune in and want to hear this.
That'd be great.
I did this without asking you guys, but I started a Facebook page.
Mm.
Okay.
Oh, you son of a
So you can add the link. I kind of was thinking that this could be like a tribute page where we don't necessarily make it, but people just post and contribute their Woofing Cookie related media.
What's that page
Those
called?
guys owe me $10.
Did
Come
you
and get it.
Chad, did you invite us to join that page?
I literally just started it. So you will get
As we were talking
everybody
about.
here will get an invite.
Awesome.
And I know the URL is woofingcookies.com is available too, which I'm totally willing to get and buy.
I think we should own that.
All right. Thomas, thank you, man. This was this. I can tell with these guys too that they had fun. But speaking for myself, this was a hoot. It's fun to think about those days and sort of just remember the what we were able to accomplish and yeah. So thanks.
Maybe somebody will be inspired.
Yeah, we got to do round 2 with Joe now too. I have like I'm probably gonna listen to all that stuff when you said it, and I'm gonna like 10 times as many questions.
Man.
That was
Anytime you want.
It was a bit like a Yeti.
Maybe this pandemic will be over and we can come up to the studio.
That'd be great. Yeah.
You know.
All right. Well, I'm gonna let you go. It's been this interview has been great, but also way too long. So you got to get back to your lives. I'm gonna let you go now.
Thomas, thanks for having us.
Thank you so
man.
much for reaching out.
Yeah.
Have a good night.
Take it easy.
Take it easy.